there comes that age, I think, for everyone where you see your parents not as you saw them when you were a kid.
They aren't the superheroes you thought.
Yeah, they're not always as funny as you thought, which that became blatantly obvious at an early age that my parents were not as funny as I thought they were. The Career Challenges Podcast, a collection of stories about overcoming professional hurdles and learning lessons the hard way. Thank you for joining me. I'm your host, Kyle Werkerly, certified ghostwriter. Welcome to the Career Challenges Podcast, and I have with me Super Joe Pardo. And Joe, you are a business coach and a consultant, correct?
I absolutely am. Thank you so much for having me, Super Kyle. I'm excited to jump in here and drop some of that. What do they say? Knowledge bombs? Is that the thing that
knowledge
bombs?
bomb.
Like 2 years ago. I don't know. Can't keep up with the trends.
I like it. I'm going to keep going with that. There's some like slang words that you want to keep around just because, like, I like that. And I'm glad we got rid of "what's up." I mean, that was interesting for a time, and it's good to do a throwback with that every now and then. But if we keep doing that, we run that into the ground. So there's some slang I like to keep around. So knowledge bombs, we're keeping that. So you can keep that during the rest of the show. Okay. So anyway, you're a business coach, and where are you based out of?
Out of good old freedom-loving Philadelphia.
All right. And so, have you always been in Philly?
Yeah, I grew up in South Jersey, so it's like right over the bridge. You go down the street from my house, you can actually see the skyline. So I'm like right within stone's throw. But yeah, my family's pretty much out of South Philly. So I grew up in South Jersey because they decided to move. The generation before my dad, like my grandparents, decided to move out of South Philly and planted here in South Jersey, and I've been here ever since. I grew up in the house that I live in now. I've lived here since I was about 6 years old, so I'm 32 right now, and there was 1 year where I moved out, and I moved right back in when I bought the house from my dad.
There you go. So have you always been a business coach?
No, I haven't. I grew up in my family's business from the age of 6, and I left at the age of 20. I was 26 at the time when I announced that I was going to leave, and I was 27 when I officially left in April of 2014. It was my April 2nd, 2014 was my last day.
Right. And so what prompted you to leave, if you feel comfortable
sharing? Yeah. I'm an open book with this stuff, man. So basically I got burnt out. I was doing a lot of really in-depth inventory management stuff, trying to make some big changes. The business had 10 locations. It was in truck parts. So we were selling heavy duty truck parts. It had its own trucking division where we actually moved loads for other people. Had a brokerage company, actually 2 repair shops, and it was 10 locations for the truck parts end of it. So, and there was a properties company as well. So it was 5 businesses making up $100 million company or set of companies that I was in line to take over, and I just felt like I was getting nowhere. I wasn't getting where I wanted to be. And it was about 3, 4, 5 years leading up to me leaving, of me should I leave? Everything about my life I have to contribute back to this place. Thanks to my grandfather, my great grandfather, my dad, building up mostly the truck parts end of it being the biggest of it. I was the largest independently owned truck parts company on the East Coast. So yeah, I was kind of petrified. I went to school, but I dropped out in the second semester, so I had no degree. Still have no degree, actually. And I didn't know what to do. I was like, I want to leave, but I really don't want to go work for anybody else. I don't have a degree. It's like, I'm going to go back to school, I guess. And so that's what I did. Before I left, I started to go back to school. And as time went that was in the summer of 2013. In 2014, I finally left in April. And I still had no idea what I was going to do with my life.
And so what got you onto the idea of coaching and consulting?
Yeah, so at the time of leaving, I was doing I was also a DJ growing up too. And I was putting together my first DJ album, and it came out April 14th of 2014. So leading up to that, it was like 3 months of putting that together piece by piece. And I was like, I really love this idea of like doing this creative stuff and selling it and making money. And like I was like, how do I turn this into something like that? So I was doing a bunch of podcast interviews at the time for the release of the album. It was a Disney music mashup album. So it's Disney music mashed up with hip hop instrumentals. It was all done on turntables, and it tells the story of Up, if you recall Pixar's Up.
Oh my gosh, I cried in that one.
I know, sorry. Me too, right? It's one of my favorite movies.
And I went home and I hugged my wife because I didn't see it with her. Me and my friend went, and I'm just bawling in the theater. And I go home and I hug her. I'm like, don't ever die. She goes, this was a Disney movie. What did you watch? I'm like, you have no idea. Anyway, keep going.
So I love the idea of adventures out there, and it really inspired and jump started this idea. So April 2nd I leave. The album comes out on April 14th, and I'm on a flight it was about a month later. It was like early May. I'm on a flight down to Disney World to go run a 5K with a friend of mine, and I was like, hey, like, is there any other podcasts that you know of that I could like guest on? I was doing a lot of Disney interviews and stuff like that at the time, and he was telling me about this other podcast where they interview entrepreneurs, and I was like, oh, I never even thought about like podcasting as an interview platform. To me, it was like, oh, I'm just trying to get on like these roundtable discussion about about Disney World and stuff like that. So I was like, whoa, this is crazy. So we're on the plane, and I was like, well, I know a ton of people in business, like, but I was like, at the time, I was like, I know a lot more people who are living their dreams. So the plane landed. I already had a list of people that I wanted to have on the show. A lot of people I knew, some people I didn't, some people I knew I kind of had connections to. Plane landed. Before we get to the rental car, I registered the domain name, Twitter handle, and Facebook page for dreamerspodcast.com. That was before we got to the rental car. So that weekend, I'm like talking to my friends who are all runners and networking, and they're like, oh, you got to talk to this person, that person, this person. And 2 weeks later, with the help of my friend Al Kessel, who's my Mr. Voice at the end of every episode, he helped. I already had like the music, the sound, technical background, the technology background. I was an IT director in my family's business, as well as the operations director for a number of years. So I had this background, and I was like, okay, I just need a couple of like pointers of what I need to do. Bam. 2 weeks later, got the first episode out, went from 1 episode to 3 episodes in 1 week, releasing 3 a week. And then a month later, I dropped to 5, or I went up to 5 episodes a week for the next 3 months, built up this big back catalog, slowed it down. And so in that time, I started to see the picture, like, and I was telling like my dad and some of my family, and some of my neighbors, like they had never even heard of what a podcast was. And I was like, look, no, here's the grand scheme, right? Like, I'm going to write these books. I'm going to get speaking engagements. We're going to, put the podcast together, get coaching clients. That at the time I was trying to focus more on the life coaching aspect of it, because people have always come to me with their life issues. It just, I don't know, it just happens naturally. I can't explain it, but it just has always happened for me. And it's one of those things where, growing up, I wanted to be a child psychologist, to help other kids going through divorce like I was. And that was at the age of 6. I actually cried to my grandparents on the floor about this, because I was like, I'm the only boy. I'm supposed to take over the family business. There's like no one else other than my sister's there. But like, I was there sweeping the floors and doing, putting inventory away, counting inventory, 6, 7 years old. And they're like, no, you don't have to take over family business. You can do whatever you want as long as you do the best job. Your great grandfather was a street sweeper, and a huckster, selling vegetables, and stuff like that in Philly, which outside of Philly, a huckster is not a good thing. But in Philly, you sell vegetables and fruit off the back of your truck.
Wow. One of those like colloquialism things.
Yeah. So like that, made a huge impact on me. Anyway, so I started putting all the pieces together. I'm like, all right, I'm going to speak. I'm going to write these books. I'm going to have this podcast. I'm going to get coaching clients. That I'm going to help them achieve their dreams. Put them in the right place. And over time, like it just turned into more of, and over the course of the years to come, like I wrote the books, I did the speaking gigs, had a handful of clients off and on. I also like built websites because I've been building websites since '96. So it was like something else I could do to help bring in cash. Because like, when you have a certain lifestyle and your income is built around a certain lifestyle, and all of a sudden like the faucet turns off, it's like, hey, I need to do whatever I need to do to like not lose. Like, don't lose. I told you, I live in the house I grew up in. So it's like, don't lose the house. Whatever I do not lose the house. Glad to say 5 years later, we're still here. So
yeah, definitely.
So it was like, okay, so I'm putting all these pieces together, and over time it's just turned into like, okay, we're really talking about business. So it became like, Dreamers Podcast, business lessons from those that live their dreams. And during that period of time was when I won Business Podcast of the Year through the podcastawards.com, the 12th annual podcast awards. So that was like mind blown, crazy, that a show called the Dreamers Podcast could win a business show. And at the time I was like, I think I'm going to change the name up to Business with Super Joe Pardo. And talking with some of my friends, they're like, hey, I love you. I love your show. But if I didn't know you, I wouldn't listen to your show, because the whole Dreamers Podcast with like the Sharpie marker logo and stuff, like that's not, it doesn't speak to me, Joe. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. I get it. So So I changed the name of the show, and I continued to have clients. I've continued to speak. I started up the Mid-Atlantic Podcast Conference in the meantime. Started that back in the end of 2014. And in 2015, we held the first conference. So this year, we're on our fifth conference,
awesome.
Where we have well over 100 podcasters coming. From Hall of Famer podcasters to startups, to hobbyists, to business owners, to like all kinds of walks of life come through and get together, and we learn and share from each other over a course of 2 days. It's a lot of fun. So but yeah, I mean, that's just a piece of like what I've done in the meantime, because I started a lot of other businesses. In fact, I recently launched 234 Threads because I love creating the shirts for MapCon. I love creating the shirts for my podcast, and I wanted to create a brand that spoke to not only the a nonprofit aspect to it, where we help the homeless start up their own businesses through doing these boot camps where they come in, they get to work one-on-one with entrepreneurs that have purchased a T-shirt, from the company in the past, as well as all the other networked in people, resources, possibly funding, and then have other resources like food and clothing and showers, haircuts, all these things like at these business boot camps. So it all starts with these awesome T-shirts that are designed for people like me who are entrepreneurs, tech heads, and dreamers.
Awesome. So that was a small piece, I take it?
Yeah. Well, I wrote 4 books too. I mean, I know it's a lot. I know there's a lot. I know I do a lot. And it's a blessing and a curse, because I love getting to do so much. It expands. I learn as much as I can from everything that I do. But at the same time, it's also because it's like so hard to explain the big picture of everything.
Oh, that's what I love. And it's like there's a lot of information that you just shared. I'm like, whoa, where do I begin now? Because usually it's like, oh, I need to ask that one deep and insightful question, and we'll really get going. And then, you give me this huge story. I'm like, oh, wow, there's so many deep and insightful questions. So
go ahead. And
yeah. So I'm going to start with what I like the most, just because I'm a ghostwriter. I love books. I love writing books and reading books, and of course speaking with fellow authors. So tell me about your books. You said you've written 4.
Yes.
So
the first 3 were self-development books that spoke to the whole Dreamers podcast branding. They're great books. They still sell well. The first one was like a kind of like a like a manifesto of
Mm-hmm.
how I feel. It's called 31 Life-Changing Concepts, and it's like kind of my outlook on life and how I look at things. It's for people like me who don't like to read or are very slow readers like myself.
Yeah,
So
I'm
it's
a
got
slow
lots of
reader too, though.
pictures. Oh, really? And
Yeah.
right. And you're a writer, and people don't understand this. They're like, how could you be a writer but you don't read books? I'm like, I'm a slow reader and it takes me forever, so I just don't do a lot of it, and I don't really want to get too much input because I don't want to sound like anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So if I read a bunch of other books, like that stuff's inevitably going to creep in to my creative process.
Mm-hmm.
If I read a bunch of self-development books and then try to write a self-development book, what do you think that self-development book's going to sound like?
Yeah, and you'll feel like you're ripping off from those authors.
Oh, I won't, but other people will.
Oh, yeah,
and it will
definitely.
affect the bottom line, right?
Yeah. And like you talk about like how some people are surprised when you're a quote unquote slow reader.
Mhm.
It takes me, if it's a print book, I'm not as good because I have to actually sit down and read it. But with audiobooks, usually I can get through about one in about a week and a half.
Mm.
And that's just with my schedule and being able, and since I have my phone with me, I can listen to them. And so I'm able to knock out books that way. And I went up to my friend and I was so proud, and I said, hey, and this was end of January this year, I walked up to my friend and said, hey, I've finished 4 books in a month. And that's big for me because, I really want to read. I need to be better about it as a ghostwriter, not just that, but, my own personal development. And he looks at me and goes, I finished a book in about 1 to 2 days. And I'm like, well, aren't you special? Walk off. Anyway, so there's those people who they read so fast. I'm like, I wish I had that skill, but at the same time, it hasn't stopped me from doing this. Go ahead.
I had to read every word. I read every word because I don't want to miss anything that might be important. And I guess these speed readers, like one of my brothers, Matt, he reads books like so fast, so fast. And I'm like, how do you do it? He's like, well, I kind of read like sideways down the pages. And I was like, but aren't you worried that you're going to miss something? And he's like, nah, not really. And then it dawned on me, right? So like the way I write my books are very direct and to the point so that everything in it is like you can't miss something in it. Because if you miss something in it, you're missing valuable information. There isn't a bunch of fluff and stories and all that stuff. It's very to the point. So, and in the first book I drew all the pictures in Sharpie marker, like I was saying. So I'm not an artist. Well, I kind of started to feel like I might be an artist at this point, 5 years down the road. But at the time, I was like, I'm not an artist, but I play one in a book. And the whole point was to show, like, hey, look, you can be something without being something, and you can still do it to the best of your ability. So I drew all the pictures. I colored them with Sharpie marker. And that was a real pain. That took forever. And I had to sit in front of a fan because it's Sharpie marker, and I didn't want to get high as a kite trying to do this. So the second book is it's a coloring book called How to Dream Big and Win. And the reason it's a coloring book is because I wasn't coloring those pictures in the second time. But no, really, the reason is because I wanted people to get in that mindset of being a child again and figuring out, like, what is it that I wanted to be and what's the real root of why I wanted it, so I can amplify that message through my life and through the work that I do. The third book it came to me in a dream, and 10 days later it existed. It's 165 self-affirmations, and it's kind of like in like repetitive artwork, like repetition artwork. So the words, it's like, I love myself, and they'll say it all the way down the page. And the next page will say, like, I love to smile. And they'll say it all the way down the page. And then I took the mouse and I inverted the colors. So instead of being black text on white background, I used the white text on black background to paint letters onto each page. So it's actually a flip book of messages. Like, each page is a character. So You're like you could, like, there's hidden messages in it, both forward and backward. And some of the letters are kind of hard to make out, but I have it written down because I didn't want to forget what I wrote in it. So some people like really hated that book. I knew people were going to not, there was going to be people that were like, I don't get it, and this is silly. But I saw it. I Googled it to see if someone else did it. They didn't do it. Okay, cool. We're doing it. And 10 days later, I had this book. The last book is called Sales Won't Save Your Business. Now, that is the first business book that I wrote. That took about 2 years because that's like a serious, like 200.
Well, it sounds like a serious topic as well because it jumps out at you. You know, people assume, well, I got to sell something to be successful, and then here you are saying, no, that's not what's going to make you successful, and so that automatically is going to make you stop. So you're assuming from the title right there, oh, this book has got something. You know, at least it'll be thought provoking. So I'm like, I hear that title right now, and I saw it on your website. I'm like, oh, I'm putting that on my reading list. So that's on my reading list right now.
Awesome.
So I'm at the very least intrigued, and so I'm pretty sure I'm going to learn something. But I'm intrigued.
I hope so. I hope so. It's like I said, it's a lot of food for thought. It's a workbook too. So each chapter has like lines and questions for you to answer. To how to implement it into your business. So it took a lot longer. I mean, it took a lot longer than I initially wanted. Like I wrote out the outline, and then I just kind of got lost in the meantime. So it took a little longer, but I do want to go back. The fifth book I'm working on slowly because I have a lot of other projects going on, including my own TV show that I'm working on, producing and starring in. So it's going to be a leadership book that's really going to take like the first 3 books and kind of put it into a more like professional-ish kind of setting versus like the artwork. Like, I mean, some of the artwork might be borrowed, but it's kind of like a collaboration of the 3 books mashed up for, based on leadership.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And so you said you didn't read you don't like to read other stuff. You're not doing any research. This is all just kind of like your self or lessons from your own life yourself.
So not just my own, but so when I say I don't read books, I do read people. And what's one of the things that having the podcast enabled me to do was to interview, like I would gather stories, prior to that from mostly people that were a lot older than me. That's how I learned a lot of lessons and, got a lot of insight into things that I was interested in or situations I wanted to steer clear from, or situations that I was told about and still went in and it was like, oh man, this is not good for me. I need to get out. They were right. But having the podcast enabled to speed up some of that process, by getting to interview so many people so deeply and having them feel open and feel like they just left the therapist office after we would talk. So it enabled me to have a lot more to pull from, a lot more ideas that I could pull from, and kind of, turn them a bit and kind of fit into the experiences that I had that shed light into. That helped a lot. So yeah, no, I don't, like I said, I could probably count on like both hands, maybe an extra hand, how many books I've read in my lifetime. I really don't read books. And it's a shame too. Like my friends would be like, "Hey, I wrote this book," and I'd be like, "I'm gonna buy it, but please don't ask me to read it because it's probably not gonna happen." And I have so many books now that I would never have had prior to 5 years ago.
Awesome. Well, it's so great to have a library. I always like it when there's a library in people's house. So I wish I had more.
I got a music library. I got tons of records. So, I got that too.
I don't have records, but just my iPod. I have like one of the old, like the original, like first gen iPods.
Oh wow!
And this was like 160 gig, and I've still only have like 40 gigs of it used up. But that's my entire music library, and I could, it's days worth of music that I would just sit. I think
I'm at like 380 gigs or something like that for because again the DJ thing. So I had a lot of music.
Yeah, that makes sense. I tried music for once or twice, and it just I guess I don't have the drive to really stick with it. But I love listening to music, and I could list a whole bunch of composers and artists that I really love listening to, and we'll put into it.
Well, there's so much you can get out of it. I use music like aside from running as a form of meditation to like put these thoughts together, like to link things up. Listening to music, like there's a lot of music that I'll listen to where it's just it puts me in the headspace that I can just start connecting the dots and figuring things out. I mean, one of my favorites is Dead Mouse. Like some of his music is just like it's insane how much you can pull out of yourself if you just like relax and listen, or even just drive. Go for a drive and listen, and you're just start putting things together, the words or the sounds, it brings things to light that you wouldn't know otherwise.
Mm-hmm. For me, it's more the instrumental, like epic music, like Two Steps from Hell, Nick Phoenix, Hans Zimmer. I have a lot of his soundtracks because I love that sound quality. And somebody had told me, I think this was back in college, that instrumental music, and even if there's voices in it, they can't really be saying words, they can be that vocalization. That taps into your creativity, because when you have the words in there, you're tapping the right side of your brain, and you're trying to hear the word, analyze it, because you need to assign the meaning in your head. And so when there's words or music with words, it makes it a little more difficult, or at least for me, and I don't know if that's just me, but for me, it's like whenever I'm writing, or I'm trying to solve, or just trying to work on stuff, I always go for the epic music. I always go for that instrumental stuff, and I definitely can tell a difference between when I'm forcing myself to be creative with no music, and then when I'm turn it on and just let my mind wander. It's like I feel like it's so much more out of that second experience than I do the first. So anyway, got off on a long tangent there, but it was really a lot of fun.
That's podcasting for you.
Yeah, and that's what I love too, is like the conversations here in podcasting. And not just that, you mentioned too that your experience with podcasting has given you those stories or those concepts and lessons that you want to put into your own book. And so I think that's one of those hidden perks of podcasting that A, if you stay with it long enough, you can do, but B, it gives you that avenue to these people that you would never meet in your lifetime. I mean, I don't think I ever would have run into Super Joe Pardo on my own doing what I do here in San Antonio, Texas. So
no, that is one of the things that I really love. I mean, it's all about the relationships and the people that I meet. So I absolutely love the fact that I get to talk to people like yourself, and people like the people that I've had on my show and connected with literally all over the world. The friends that I have, the relationships are just, it just makes it so worth it. Like it's just so much more fulfilling.
Definitely. Would you like to be a guest on the Career Challenges podcast? Visit careerchallengespodcast.com to find out how. And while you're there, listen to all available episodes and subscribe through Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and CastBox. More outlets are coming soon. The Career Challenges podcast is produced by me, Kyle Weckerly, and I'm a certified ghostwriter. A little bit more about that. I work almost exclusively with business authors. I've worked with authors who are coaches, consultants, mentors, speakers, some high-ticket salespeople, C-level executives, and of course, business owners. My authors have worked for USAA, Vistage, Booz Allen Hamilton, Austin Technology Council, and the John Maxwell team. They want to write a book, and they want that book to help them expand their business. See, with a book in hand, they're able to market their expertise, or secure more speaking gigs, or promote their company, or all three, or maybe even more than that. They're not out to write a bestseller, though that would be nice. Instead, they have years of knowledge and experience, and sorting it out will be no easy task. More importantly, they want all that knowledge and experience to be an engaging read. To learn more about how you can become an author, visit WeckerlyWriter.com. That's WeckerlyWriter.com, and schedule a consultation today. And now, back to the Career Challenges podcast. Let's get to the serious stuff here then, the business stuff, because this is a business podcast. But you had mentioned that you kind of already had that experience with life coaching because people just kind of came to you. And why is that? I got to ask, why do you think that happened?
I guess I make people feel comfortable for some reason. I don't know. You know what? I think I have, it's the ability for me to see both sides of it. And to challenge, like, I like when people have that story and they're talking about like, oh well, she said blah 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 blah, and you're like, I'm like, well, I could see what you're saying, and I don't disagree with what you're saying, but what if on their side of it, there's these three things that are going on? One of these three things may or probably are going on, and if that's the case, then maybe you shouldn't feel so bad about it, or maybe you should be really angry about it. And I guess just being able to, I don't know, have insight into those things and make people feel comfortable. I honestly, I really don't know, because this honestly goes back to being a kid and having people come to me, like people way older than me coming to me as like 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old Joe, like people that are like 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 30, 40, talking to me about things that they probably shouldn't have been, but
yeah.
I don't know. I honestly, I really don't know. And had it not, had I liked going to school better, I probably would have, like I said, I wanted to be a child psychologist as a kid, but I wasn't going to go to school for 10 years. That just wasn't me. I was the C student because I wanted to play video games, not do homework after school.
Yeah, I was a C student as well, but it's because I was reading comic books.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, how many hours do you got to hold me hostage in this building and then tell me after the fact, oh yeah, go home and do all of this. And if you don't do it, then like 2/3 of your grade is going to suffer for it, no matter how good you do on your test, no matter how good you understand it, or even if you just borderline get it. And it's like, oh, well, you got like a B- or a C+. Cool. That's not going to be good enough because you didn't do the homework, you fail. Or you're a CD student.
Wow.
I mean, to me, look, it's not for everybody, right?
Yeah. I completely agree. And I used to be a teacher as well. My wife is a teacher. My parents, my mom is a retired teacher. Yeah, and my dad's a college professor. And yet, I still believe that some people just aren't geared for school, or our system is so institutionalized that it doesn't work for them. And that doesn't mean they can't learn. It's just we haven't figured out how to tap into their natural curiosity to get them to want to learn. So getting into coaching, business coaching, where did you start finding clients? Was it word of mouth? Did you go join a group or something?
So it was right out of the gate. I had a couple of clients that it's funny because like my podcast and like the things I was trying to accomplish were in the life coaching space, but like right out of it, I had a couple of clients that I was working with, some very small businesses, that was all word of mouth. They just like were like, oh, I could totally use your help. And because I had the tech background from building websites to like photography and video and all that stuff, like it just I was able to offer so much more than just like, oh, I'm going to talk to you, help you get there and all that stuff. Like I actually like built a website for a couple of those clients and took photos of their products and put together the web store and all that stuff. So like, it's funny. Like people always go on about like, oh, you're the jack of all trades and master of none. It's like, yeah, I guess I don't know if you're trying to make that as like an offensive-ism or a jealousism. I don't know, but like for me, I see it as a blessing and a curse, right? Because like I said earlier, it's like I've done all this stuff, I can do all this stuff. Am I the best at it? No. But I'm pretty darn good at some of those things, and I can definitely refine to get better. Figuring out what you're best at, and then outsourcing the rest is great. It sounds great, unless you don't have the money to do it because you're busy trying to pay the bills so you keep your lights on and your house together. So it's about just trying to strike that balance there. But yeah, a lot of it came out of word of mouth. Joined a local chamber of really active chamber of commerce. Love my Greater Woodbury Chamber of Commerce. And yeah, it just kind of grew from there. I mean, doing the interviews networked me in with a lot of people that I would have no reason to talk to otherwise, and that's really where a lot of it started out of.
Awesome. And so I guess what were some challenges and obstacles for you getting to where you are now?
Staying focused. There was a lot of doubt going around when I first, actually even after I left my family's business, and trying to, the great thing about having the ability to talk to people who get it online all day every day. It was like my office. Basically living in Skype, because I was just constantly talking to more and more people, trying to gain this rapid network growth, because the people around me just didn't get it. So the amount of support that I had, I mean, it came from my wife and a couple of my close brothers and friends, but it wasn't like an overwhelming like landslide of support that like, oh, like this is how you're gonna get there and I'm gonna help you in this way or that way. It was just a lot of like, I mean, one person like literally looked me in the eyes from across the room, was like, you need to quit and go back to work with your dad, because this is never going to work. And it's like, wow, okay, that really hurts my feelings. Like I don't even really know this person though. I know the people, like like it's a family member of the people that I do know, but yeah, it absolutely hurt my feelings. So there was a lot of days where when you stop having the wins, like you get the big win, you get the high, and then like a day or two later and like nothing's happening.
Yeah.
You start to get like, oh no, like is this all going to come crashing down around me? And you don't really know. Now, part of the problem, Kyle, what for me, and I think it's important that other people understand. It's like I'm still to a certain extent trying to figure out hone in exactly what I want my core business to look like and feel like and produce. Because like I said, we did a bunch of little startups over to try to figure out, and each one I learned plenty of stuff along the way. So trying to figure out like what's the business, what's my lifestyle, what's the lifestyle I want, and then work backwards from there. And that's why I always preach to people, like, build your business for your lifestyle, not your lifestyle for your business, because the businesses are a metal box. And they're like a robot, and they just want to operate 24/7, nonstop, keep going, and they will grind your face off. The opposite of that is the fact that these metal boxes are housed with gooey insides, which are people, and people have outside problems and outside influences and outside conflicts and things going on, and excuses and all that stuff. So that's why you have to like take control of that, and figure out, like, there was a lot of things like, okay, at one point I was like, okay, I want to get as many clients as I can possibly do, and then I started to try to like pull that back a little bit, because it was overtaking the amount of time that I have just recently. Like, so one of the things was one of the aspects of the story is almost a year ago, I actually came back to work with my dad. I mean, when I left, we ended in a fist fight. Like, it was not good. Like, we didn't really talk for years. Yeah, it wasn't until we had our daughter that like we had to start interacting and seeing each other and that kind of stuff. It was really not good between us. So, and I say this not because I'm mad at him or whatever. Like, I say this because I want someone else to say, that's me, and I want more. And I get it, right? Like, I get it. Like, I have one dad and one mom, and like there's a clock over all of us, and like someday that's going to end, and then I have to live with that guilt if I don't try to figure out how I can live with what has been presented to me. Mm-hmm. So the time was going by. And once our son was born back in February 5th, 2018, which we were talking about before this, mm-hmm. He started coming over like every Friday and was just sitting on the couch and was like talking to my ear, trying to get me interested, because he sold the parts business. He shut down the trucking company. He shut down the brokerage company. He always got his one repair shop and the properties company. So he's basically back to grassroots, and he's like, look, we're gaining ground. We're doing all these things. I really want you to come back on board. And I was like, look, this is what I want to do. I want to build something bigger than this, because I don't really like, and it's no secret, trucking is not like, I grew up around it. I didn't grow up under trucks like my dad did, or my grandfather, or my great uncle, or my grandfather, or great grandfather. I didn't. I grew up in front of computers, so it's like it's the main ticking like thing behind this. So I was like, look, if I'm coming back, like, we're building a franchise out of this Pardo Fleet Solutions business, the repair shop. It's called Pardo Fleet Solutions, but it's really Pioneer Truck Sales was the original company that goes back to the 60s. Started by my great grandfather, my great uncle, and my grandfather. So it's like a long history, and it's a ton of backstory to that. So anyway, I was like, I'll come back if we can build a franchise, because like my goal is to get down to like 3 to 4 days a week, and I just want to own a piece of it, and then that's all I need. Like I don't need I live a life that is much, I guess, quote unquote, smaller than he does. I don't need a bunch of cars. I don't care about big boats. I don't care about boats at all. I don't care.
They're
about
nice, but I'm not gonna go get a boat.
I can rent one. With the amount of money that you get, you don't have to buy a house somewhere. You can rent a house. It's called Airbnb, or you could get a hotel room. You don't have to buy a plane. You have to charter a plane. These are little things that it's whatever. So for me, like that's the plan, because the ultimate goal is to build out this right now. It's like build out this franchise, and get it rolling, so that I can go and do more speaking gigs, so that I can spend more time with my family, so that I can do more mastermind events, and host more map cons, and host do the things that I really, really enjoy, which is like hosting live events, podcasting, creating video. I mean, I've done like 1,000 videos on YouTube. That create whatever I'm creating, that's the most. I mean, that's where the t-shirt company came from, like everything. It's about creating and helping people. Yeah.
Awesome. So you sound very, very busy.
I
yeah. So this is great that I got to at least an hour of your time. But you had mentioned things changing with your dad after you had a child. I mean, do you see your dad in a different light now?
A little bit. I think he's learned some lessons, some things from it. One thing is that none of this is permanent. I held a lot of anger when he sold the business. It started my grandfather back in 1981, and I owe a lot, if not everything, to that. At least to this point in my life, from the knowledge to the physical things that I was able to purchase and the life I was able to live, for better or for worse. So I owe a lot to that, and I was really mad about that. But I think that what he's learned and what I've learned in the subsequent, and I think talking to a lot of different people through my podcasting journey, and is to you have, to a certain level, you have to just accept. You have to learn to accept, and things are the way they are. And nothing is permanent, right? Like the business could have been sold a long time prior to when my dad decided to sell it. Like my grandfather talked about selling it before too. So you never know. So you just I guess for me, it's like trying to mitigate the anxiety of like, I know that none of us are getting out of this alive. So there's like a certain level of like, how much should I really care? Like, how much does any of this really matter? Like, even this house, right? Like, I live in this house that I grew up in, has a ton of attachment to it. It was a great price when I bought it. Obviously I'm still paying, I still have a mortgage and stuff, but it was a great price at the time, and still is, and set me up in a way that is, at the time of being 22, 23, 24, probably no, 22, I guess, 21, 22, buying a house, like it set me up in a great way. You know, but it's just a box, and even like, I mean, growing up here and living here now, like a lot of my neighbors are still the same neighbors from when I grew up, and almost all of them are retired, which, as an entrepreneur that works from home, all of a sudden, you get to go hang out on the porch with them in the afternoon, and they're like, shouldn't you be at work? Like, yeah, I know, but I've been up, I'll be up until like 2 a.m. getting stuff done. I need to take a break. And I figured I'd come out here because it's a nice day and sit on the porch and drink an iced tea and relax for like an hour or so. And, but they don't understand that. I mean, they grew up in the land of pensions. So it's just different.
It's a different
with
mindset.
that said, I don't ever plan to really retire, between writing books and coaching masterminds, helping other people, creating things. Like I don't know. I don't see myself getting tired of doing that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And maybe that time will come. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, the reason why I asked about, seeing your father in a different light, I went through a phase too where I held a lot of anger against my dad, and just, things coming to light when I was younger. And there comes that age, I think, for everyone, where you see your parents not as you saw them when you were a kid.
They aren't the superheroes you thought.
Yeah, they're not always as funny as you thought, which that became blatantly obvious at an early age, that my parents were not as funny as I thought they were. No, but with my dad, I always saw him kind of as this resolute person. Strict, orderly. We're going to do it this way. And he didn't talk a lot. My mom's a talker, and I think that's where I get that, very emotional, in touch with her feelings, things like that. My dad is not that way at all. And so, I just saw him as this, he was my dad. And I came to the point in my life before I had kids that I'm like, I love this guy. I'm gonna go forward with that. I could hold against him all these past injustices, and really make life difficult. But then some other things happen in life where I'm like, there's no point to that. And then I had a kid, and he completely changed. I mean, this guy is a cupcake. He is such a pushover. And I'm growing up, and he's like, you need to clean up and do this at a certain time, and he ruled with this iron fist. And then with my daughters, they're like, I want a cookie, Grandpa. Oh, you can have a cookie. You can have 10 cookies. I'm like, who the heck are you? And so, and so I'm always curious, with other guys who, have kids, and then they see their dads interact with them. Is that a different person who's holding your child than the one that raised you?
I see it. I've seen it with, so like one of the things, like I tell the story about my, my grandparents, my grandmother, grandfather telling me that, like, hey, you could go and be whatever you want, and we'll be proud of you. You don't have to like take over the family business or even work there if you don't want to. I mean, they helped me get like some of my original DJ equipment. They helped fund that, speakers and things, so I could go and do these gigs and all that stuff. So, but like talking with like my dad, he's like, well, that's not how your grandfather was when I was growing up. And I'm like, yeah, I guess not. I think it's pretty obvious. They wouldn't have said that. I was expected to do this, and this. And it's like, well, they were in a different position. And I happened to be in a position where, they were, able to give me the advice that changed the course of my life. And to answer your question from before about why do I think people open up to me, I think I've answered that question myself. And I think it's, the whole heart on my sleeve kind of thing, combined with the fact that I'm not afraid to open up and tell people myself about what what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, and how the experiences that I've had. I think it just enables people to feel more confident and comfortable with coming forward and, sharing their experiences as well. You know, and I always want to make sure that I'm not trying to take advantage of it. It's one of the reasons why I really don't like doing sales. And it's not about what the book.
Sales, man. I hate sales. Yeah.
I mean, I do if I believe in the product or the service or something to that effect. But I don't want people to ever feel like they're being exploited from the fact that I'm able to get them to open up or I'm opening up to them. You know what I mean? So it's a very fine line. I don't want people to ever feel like I'm trying to be like disingenuous. It's like, oh, I shared this thing so you could share this thing, so that bam, I got the sale, and now I'm walking out with all your money. It's like, I don't know, and maybe it's because I cared too much. I don't know, man.
Maybe. So, that's really great. But get back to something a little more business oriented. So if somebody
life is business, man. Life is business.
And
that's what I'm saying. All these outside things affect us and how we like you were saying, I just said, I don't care for doing the sales part of it because it's, all these life experiences that we've had play into that.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think like when, thinking about where I grew up in Philly, blue collar and everybody's like very skeptical and quick to be like, oh, shenanigans. I guess that I would say that probably also plays into a bit of it as well. My own skepticism that I have to keep suspending in order to, cause like even like in the coaching field, right, is, it's riddled with people that don't know what the heck they're talking about, have zero experience in doing the things that they're talking about because they read it in a book or something like that. And it's like, oh, well, so, this is how it should be. And it's like, yeah, but there's also like how it really is. And that's like, and I don't want to be political, but it's like that's kind of plays on like some of the times, like some of the things that Trump will say is like, look, I know that this isn't a good thing, but this is how it really is, and it doesn't mirror what the ideal situation is. And while whether you love or hate him, I don't particularly care for him that much. But like some of the things he says when it comes to business, like, yeah, he's right. Like,
yeah, he's got a point.
This isn't the ideal situation. It's not how it's supposed to be. It's not how they tell you in school or how it is in the book. But this is what the reality is, and this is how it happens, right? So, it doesn't always shape out like the magical story that you might hear about. And it's funny, when I went back to school the second time to college, the professors all, like, I became friends with a lot of them because I was one of the oldest kids in the class at that point, at like 27 years old. And they were like, why are you here? Like, you've already experienced all this stuff and you're getting A's on all your tests. Like, what are you expecting to do with this associates that you're taking one class at a time to go get? And I'm like, I don't know. I guess I had to go get a bachelor's then, and then I'll have to spend even more time and more money for something that doesn't even make sense. But a lot of times they were telling me things. They're like, well, this is how blah, blah, blah in the book and everything like that. And I was like, I raised my hand, but like, look, this is how we did it at our place, and we were pretty successful at doing it. Does that mean we're doing it wrong? No, actually, where I work doesn't do it like this either, but this is the way I'm told to teach it because that's what it says in the book. And I'm like, well, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Like, this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. So if somebody wants to do what you're doing more or less right now, what would you tell them to do? I mean, go get the degree, or just go and try and get as much life experience as you can.
How old are they?
Well, let's say it's somebody probably 15, 16, because that's what I'm feeling is the time that a lot of kids have to make that choice: college or not college, military, trade school, whatever.
So not everybody's, is fortunate, blessed, whatever you want to call it, to have grown up in a family business and all that. But so if they want to do what I'm doing, I would say go, and you don't have a family business to learn from. Well, first of all, I mean, so I would I would definitely recommend my second book, How to Dream Big and Win, because it'll get them to write out like what it is, like what's the core of what they actually want to do. And it might just be like, I wanted to be a police officer when I was a kid. Well, why? I wanted to help people. Okay, well, how do we take that part? Because being a police officer is not necessarily all about just helping people. Let's take that piece of it and turn it from the 20% of what you do and turn it into the 80 to 90 to 100% of what you do. And also look at what you've been doing, right? What are you really good at? If you're so here's an example. When I was getting out of high school, I wanted to go to a school that would enable me to learn how to make video games. Love video games. I still play this day. I've just started my own streaming channels the other night finally. So, but my dad was like, look, I'm not going to pay for you to go to school for that. I'll pay for you to go to school for business administration. And if you go through that, then I'll pay for you to get your, go to school to get whatever, gaming degree or whatever that you want. I was like, okay, well, in retrospect, that would have been a really terrible idea for me because while I do love playing video games and I, dabbled in creating mods and games and stuff, I would be so far behind the 8 ball compared to the people that didn't even go to school because they have been doing it since they were like my one friend BJ. He started his own game company like right out of college when he got a free ride to the Art Institute. You're so far behind the 8 ball because you're going to school to learn this stuff and you weren't already doing it when you're competing against people who've been doing it since they were like 6. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So it's like, oh, I'm going to go be a graphic artist. Well, how much experience do you have? Well, if you're just getting started at the age of 18, you're really behind because people have been, these kids have been doing it since they were like 7 years old, 6 years old, and have all this years of experience in front of them. Where you're like, I wanted to be an art major or something like that, and I had no background in art. Like that's going to be helpful. So, in my opinion, I would, if you have the like real drive, and you don't want to go be, if you want to be like the advice I usually give people are like, oh, I want to go be a rock star or something to that effect. Take a couple courses. Don't invest a bunch of debt. Take a couple courses in like the local college. Spend as little money as you possibly can. Spend as little time as you possibly can. So at least you're moving the needle a little bit to hedge your bets. But spend 4 years and just go for it, right? Go for that thing because 4 years, like, okay, so you're 18, you come out 22, you might be broke, but you're still only 22 years old and you have your whole life in front of you and you can still go back to school. Like, but at least if you're, you go to like one class or whatever, and at least you're moving the needle in the meantime, if you think it's going to work or not work. And in the case of trying to be me, I would say, like, I started in the warehouse. So I'm a big proponent of like, go and get a job at something that's franchised or something that's big and do, work your butt off there, learn all the systems, the processes, the whys. And in the meantime, watch lots of documentaries because I watch tons of documentaries, and just absorb as much information as you possibly can in that time. And I would say if you're doing that and going to school, like, 1 or 2 classes a semester, you're not going to be behind the 8 ball because if you prove that you can go up that ladder, but it's not so much about going up the ladder, it's about learning the processes so that you can implement them yourself, right? And how to build your own construct. If you want to own your own business, if you want to, get to a point where you have enough life experience, you have enough stories, and then also listen, whether it's starting a podcast or going to networking events and just like listen to what people have to say, listen to their stories, get them to open up, learn how to just get people to tell you those valuable bits of information that will end up ultimately changing your life, but giving you the, helping you piece your vision together because you still might not know what you want to do. And like I said, like I'm still trying to figure out to a certain extent what I wanted. One thing I wish I could have done quicker was I wish that I could have figured out my path to what I wanted to do quicker, like in the business sector. It took me like 3 years of trying to figure out like, okay, the life coaching thing, it's okay. It's not going that great for me. But in the meantime, like I have MapCon going on, the podcast conference going on, and these other little businesses and all these other like things that are all like centered around the podcast, like everything because of the podcast. Like there's so many things that's happened to me because I started that podcast. Not saying it's for everybody, but like I said, if you're really that interested, I would definitely go get a job that has great systems and processes. Don't get a job that's a dead end job that, I mean, people will say like, oh, McDonald's is a dead end job, but like, I'll tell you, one of my closest friends, because of podcasting, Samantha Riley, go check her out. She dropped out of a high school, went to go work at McDonald's. She's in Australia. She went to go work at McDonald's, and that's where she learned all about systems and processes. And she just basically from there, she went on to have 2 multi-million-dollar businesses. Wow. And is working on her 3rd one now in the coaching space. So it's not possible. When I was working at a nonprofit in Camden, New Jersey, which anyone that's familiar with Camden, New Jersey, it's not a great place. People are great, but the area is not great. Look it up. Anyway, one of the internships that they could get is a job at ShopRite, stocking shelves. And they were like, well, how is that an internship? That's not in tech. That's not in, that's not a great internship. And I said, no, time out. It is, because you get to work in a very highly efficient place. And if you pay attention and you watch what's going on around you, you will learn so much from being there. Yeah, stocking shelves kind of sucks, but you're getting paid $10 an hour to do it. Yeah. I mean, it's not, but you're putting yourself in a position where there is a ladder to go up. There's more systems and processes to learn. And if you really hone in on what's going on around you, you'll do a good job at what you're supposed to do, you're gonna really succeed. Because you're, that jerk boss that's right above you, that's like, no, I don't like you. I don't like your face. He or she's not going to matter. They're not going to matter in the long picture. You got to keep that in mind. It's all about, what can I learn from this? What can I take away? And how can I apply it to what I want to build?
Awesome. That's great advice too. Great life advice. You. And if I had heard that when I was 15, 16, I probably would have slimmed down years off of my learning curve to get to where I am now at 34. So yeah, do the math.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So thank you for that, Joe. Which is probably why you're Super Joe. Super Joe Pardo.
Well, did you read the reason that I have the Super Joe Pardo name?
Oh, now you're putting me on the spot. I read it. Now I can't remember. What was it?
So, back in 2006, one of my best friends, brother Matt, he was working with me at the office at the shop at the parts business, and I was feeling really down about some things at the time, and he drew this picture of
the picture story. Okay, it's coming back to me now.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not a name that I gave myself. It's a name that and full disclosure, like there's people who don't get it, right? It's not about me being super, me doing all these awesome things. It's about how I can help other people elevate themselves to be the super version of themselves. That's why I said Super Kyle in the beginning, because it's not about me. It's about you, and it's about what you can do to be the super version of yourself. At the time I really needed, I needed somebody to do that. And I'm so glad that I kept it. I'm so glad that I've registered the superjoepardo.com. And I'm so glad that 2 years after starting this journey that I was like, you know what, I'm going to use this. Mm-hmm. And I switched everything over in 2017. I guess it was like 3 years. And ran. I was like, you know what, I'm just going to own it and run with it. And it is what it is. And there's people in my family who do not like it at all. They think that it's a joke, that people won't take, how could you take this seriously? But at the same time, I had people who have doctorates. They're like, I'll trade you my doctorate for your super. Two very good friends of mine. One's a dean at a university, and the other one's very high up at another university, a very prominent university at that. So, I think, I don't remember what the original piece was.
Yeah.
It was about how I got the name. So yeah. But that's, so the question that always stands out in Matt's mind, he always comes back to, was, one day, I guess I was really feeling it. And he was like, he was like, oh, I'm doing all right. And I was like, why are you doing all right? Why aren't you doing great? And what do you need to do to be great? And this was in like, again, 2006, 2007. So, cause we were working together every day literally in the same room. So yeah. And so even now, like I try to always be as positive as I can about it, about life and things. And it's not always easy. It's not, believe me.
It's not. Yeah.
There's plenty of things. Like I said, plenty of days I cried on the couch because I felt like I was insignificant. What I was doing didn't matter, and I wasn't getting the results that I was looking for.
Yeah,
it sucks.
Yeah, it does, and I see a lot of similarities with my own story there too. But we just don't have time to get into all that either. So what's next for Super Joe Pardo? What's on the horizon for you?
Well, let me see. I'm working on producing my own TV show called The Top with Super Joe Pardo. That stands for Team, Offer, and Process, where I help small businesses focus on their team, offer, and process. The first pilot episode is out on YouTube. You can check that out if you go to superjoepardo.com. It's like right at the top, and there's like a YouTube window up there. You can check that out. We're working on getting a few more episodes shot in the not too distant future. I recently launched 234 Threads, which I mentioned earlier, about helping the homeless get on a path to starting their own businesses. So I design my own T-shirts, my own artwork for entrepreneurs, dreamers, and tech heads. And the neat thing about that is the shirts are only available for 7 days. So once it's gone, it's gone. And
wow.
So there's a maximum of 234 shirts available for each design. And we're working on doing collaborations with a couple different podcasts and other nonprofits to help promote the line and help promote the artwork and help promote the mission. And there's a couple of things going on with that I honestly can't really talk about. But there's some things that potentially big things could be happening with that. Let's see what else. The Mid-Atlantic Podcast Conference, go to midatlanticpodcast.com. That's taking place September 6th and 7th in Atlantic City, New Jersey. If you're interested in having your own podcast or podcasting or anything like that, got to get down to Atlantic City. The prices aren't too bad. I try to keep them as cheap as possible because I know a lot of people are doing this as a hobby or doing it as it's not like part of their business, or they want it to be part of their business. That's why we offer the Elevate Your Podcast course that takes place before the event. I'm working on a mastermind with Samantha Riley, who I mentioned before. It's called the businessfreedommastermind.com. If you go there, it's taking place on September 5th at the same hotel as MapCon. So the day before MapCon, it'll be there. It's all about like turning your business into to get more freedom, right? The whole building your business for your lifestyle, not your lifestyle for your business. I still run my podcast, the Business with Super Joe Pardo. There's the YouTube channel, all that you can get from superjoepardo.com. And I think that's all going on right now. I have, like I said, there's a book that I have kind of swirling around
that you're working on.
There's a lot. It's a lot. And then the whole franchising of the repair shop business, that's an everyday project going on.
Yeah. Awesome. And so people can find you at superjoepardo.com. Is that correct?
Yep. Right. You can go there and get everything.
Yeah, and that'll link them to all the other stuff that you also mentioned as well.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So if you didn't catch all that and you want to go back, just go to superjoepardo.com. He'll get you hooked up. Yeah.
There's a ton there to take in, and I want to thank you, Super Kyle, for having me on. I took a flyer on this guy, and it's been a great time talking to you. And I look forward to talking and being more connected with you on Facebook and social media because I'm looking forward. I want to know more about your ghostwriting, and because I might be interested in having that, because writing this book is gonna take a while if I gotta do it myself.
Definitely.
Well, I love to write, just not to read.
Yes. Definitely. So, all right. Well, thank you for being on the show, and we'll talk more, definitely. Thank you for listening to the Career Challenges Podcast. Visit careerchallengespodcast.com to listen to more episodes and subscribe. And don't forget to schedule a consultation to talk about your book today by visiting weckerlywriter.com. That's WECKERLYWRITER.com.